Okay, so there's the intro to Toon Boom getting started. So I'm just gonna double click the icon here to start it up. And if this is the first time you're opening Toon Boom, it'll open a little window. Alright, so it opens this little window first. Um, so on the right here, you'll see recent scenes, right? If you want to open a recent scene, or you can click open to browse a scene that you've already created, or you can create a new scene, right? So I'm going to create a new scene. So I'm going to call this Toon Boom Intro. And you see it puts an underscore in between if I have any space. And I'm going to choose what folder I'm going to put it in. So I'm just going to browse and choose the folder here. Alright, by default camera is 1920 by 1080 HD, 24 frames per second. So we'll just leave all those as is and I'll click create. Alright, and this is the Toon Boom workspace here. So this is the default Toon Boom workspace here. So by default we're in the camera view, right? So this is where most of your animation, right, is gonna take place. You can zoom out with the one key, pressing one on the keyboard to zoom out and two to zoom in, right? And this rectangle is the resolution gate, right? Everything inside here is what is going to be rendered. So this is your guide, right, for framing your animation here. Um, right. So before you get started, there's some important preferences that you'd want to set up. So if you go to Edit, Preferences, um, two major ones that you want to make sure are checked are Focus on Mouse Enter and also Shortcut Zooms on Mouse. Alright, those are the main two that I believe you'll want for doing hand-drawn animation. Once you have those, just click OK, and you should be good to go, right? So the focus on mouse enter, you see every time I move my mouse, um, there's a red highlight that comes around the window, right? And if you didn't have that turned on, you'd have to click on the window to highlight it every time. So um, and the focus, sorry, the shortcut zooms on mouse. If I draw something here, right, if I have the mouse over here and I zoom in, it's going to zoom in right on that object, right? Likewise, if I draw over here, it zooms in over here, right? So it zooms in on the area where the cursor is, okay? So the workspace is adjustable and you can move things around, and sometimes you end up doing that by accident. Um, like see, I just seems I just managed to stop recording there, right? So you see, I took off the camera there, so now the camera is gone, right? You can move around things, and you can close windows, and you know sometimes you might want to move things around, or you might have done it by mistake. And if you want to put things the way they were before, you just go Windows Restore Default Workspace. It will take a few seconds and it will come back to the default. Alright. Right, so normally when I'm doing hand-drawn stuff, I'm using the brush tool, which is this one here, and the shortcut for it is Alt plus B. And I use the soft lead brush, and just because it utilizes the pressure levels and it gives me the feeling of a pencil, right, more anything else, right? So, um, however, it still is, vector based. If I zoom in here, you'll see it's kind of like a combination of vector and bitmap. This soft lead, right? But you can come in here and you can adjust the vectors like that, although it's not very intuitive doing that way, but I'm just showing you that it is in fact vector, but it's kind of a combination of vector and bitmap. If we change the in the tool properties here, if we change the brush style to something else, let's say a fixed width, and we draw with that, that's kind of like your traditional flash kind of vector, and you zoom in on this and it's the same resolution, right? It doesn't get blurred, right, when you zoom in on it, right? But if you use the soft lead, it'll be more blurred. But as I said, at normal resolution, it's most similar to drawing with a pencil. So that is what I would use, right, when I'm doing the hand drawn before I clean up, right? Um, so you can do more clean stuff with these cleaner brushes. But as I say, I like to keep things more loose, right, with the soft lead. Um, no, I wouldn't recommend cleaning up your rough animation with these brush tools, right? Simply because I think it's better to do it with the pencil tool, and you'll see the difference with the pencil tool. If we look, and I selected, right, there's a center line where you can adjust and manipulate your curves, right? Whereas with the brush tool, right, you don't have that center line. You just have these outer edges that don't line up, so it's difficult to make adjustments to the shape of the curve of the line, right? So that's just something to keep in mind there. So normally when you roughing out your animation hand drawn, I would recommend just sticking with that soft lead, right, and drawing with that. All right, so this is a default drawing layer that I've been drawing on. You could rename this layer by double clicking the name and naming it whatever you want, right? Notice, right, so this is actually the first frame that I've been drawing on, and if I go to the second frame, you see the ball disappears, right? um, so what I can do if I want to do frame by frame, right, I can go forward and backwards with the frames with the shortcut full stop to go forward one frame and comma to go backward another frame. And I can turn on onion skin here by clicking this one here, um, and I can increase or decrease the number of frames I see before and after here. Alright, so this red one, right, is going to the left, and this green one is going forwards. I don't have any frames in front, so I'm only going to see ones behind here. So I can go through, straight ahead, right, and just keep drawing this ball, right, going forwards as this kind of linear kind of motion. I'll just do a couple more. Now this is working straight ahead, right? Remember the method technique, straight ahead and post pose. So my ball may be changing size when I'm doing it that way. So that's one thing to keep in mind, right? So now I have a start and a stop frame, right? So right now my animation starting at frame 1 and stopping at frame 60. If I want to stop on this frame, I could just click here and click stop, and it stops on that frame, frame 7, right? And I can loop the playback here and press play, and you'll see, right? That's the motion I got there with that ball. Um, what I'll do is I'll set the frame range back to 60. Right? I could do it like that, or I could even type it in here. Um, Now, what if I wanted to slow this animation down, right? I can add a frame, right, to each one of these, or add an exposure to each one of these, right? So instead of the ball moving every single frame, it can move every 2 frames, right? So if I select all of these and right click and go to exposure, set exposure to 2, right? Now my animation is 14 frames long, right? So if I stop it there and loop it, right? You see the animation is longer and it's slower. It's not quite as smooth as when it was on ones, but it's definitely slow, right? Slowing down. Likewise, I could put this every 4 frames, right? Or on fours, as they would say. So I right click, exposure, set exposure. I can choose a higher value here. I can set it to every 4 frames. So this is on fours. So if I stop it there and play it back, you see it's moving even more slowly. Now it's starting to feel a little more choppy now, right? It's definitely moving more slowly. So you kind of want to have your animation at least on twos for it to look, fairly smooth. When you start to get on to fours, it's gonna start to look a little bit choppy, right? Um, right. So let's say you were happy with this timing of the animation on fours, and you want to break it down to twos, right? That means you would have to in between, right, each one of these frames here. So I have a frame. The frame starts on frame one, and the next drawing starts on frame five. So I would want to go 2 frames after frame one to do an in between, right, between frame one and frame five, right? So I could bring my mouse over here and go Alt Shift R, right, to create an empty drawing, right? That's a shortcut for drawing, create empty drawing up here in the menu. And then if I turn back on my onion skin, right, you see I'm seeing the red and the green, right? So the red is the previous drawing and the green is the drawing in front of it. And then I can come in here and draw an in between, right? So I'm just doing it in a linear fashion here, so it's just a straight in between here, right? And I could do that for, you know, every 2 frames in between, the frames that are on fours, I could just in between each one of these, right, to break down emotion and make it smoother, right? So I'm basically taking it from, and remember, your mouse actually has to be over the timeline for this to work to get the empty drawing for the Alt Shift R, right? So this is actually creating an empty drawing, between, let's say if this time I'm going between frame 13 and frame 17, right? So I'm gonna go on frame 15, right? So when I create the empty drawing here, Alt Shift R, right? I have this drawing staying from 13 to 14, and from 15 and 16 is empty, and then 17 is the next drawing, right? So when I draw here, this drawing is going to be exposed from 15 to 16, right? Every 2 frames. Alright, so just drawing in that one there. This one here. Alright, and I can hold down spacebar and click and move the scene around like that. Alright, so I'm just basically showing you here how to create in-betweens, right? Okay, yeah, so this one here doesn't have one in front of it, so I'm just gonna move the ball down just a little bit more there. Alright, and if I play this now, you see it's a bit smoother, right, than when it was on fours. Okay, so let's say if we wanted a little background, right, for this animation. Let's say this is the sun setting right here. So if I want to create another layer, I can bring my mouse over here and go Control R, and then I can name it. All right, call it background. Add and close. And I can move it, drag it down below this one, right? So it's below, and select the first frame here, and then I'll decide, right, if I want that to be like my horizon, and maybe some hills in the background there. All right, something simple, and maybe a little tree in the foreground. Right, you can create as many layers, drawing levels as you want, right, with Toon Boom. All right, but notice if I move this now, right, if I um, scrub it forward, the background is disappearing, right? So I have to expose the background for the entire animation. So I'm just going to click on the last frame there and press F5, right? And that holds the background layer for the entire duration of the animation, right? Okay, so now let's talk about saving your scene, right? So you're gonna want to do this fairly often, right? When you're working on your animation, right? So that you don't lose work in case the program crashes. So you can go file save, right? In this case we already chose the destination folder, right? So it's gonna save the file in the destination folder, right? And it's important to know that this is being saved to a folder, right? So let's have a look at where this is being saved, right? So I put it in this folder here. I call it Toon Boom Intro. So this is actually saving to this Toon Boom Intro folder, right? So your Toon Boom, um, all the files associated to your Toon Boom scene, right, are contained within this folder here. So if I open this folder, elements, if I open elements, you see we have our two layers here, right? The ball animation and the background, right? And if I open that, you'll see these are all the drawings of the animation here, right? And they're all numbered, right? 1 to 14. Um, and the background, right, has that one drawing there. Frames, that would be if you were to render this animation, that would be where your rendered frames would go to, right? There's a palette library that contains your color palettes, right? Under color here, these are all your colors here. You can add colors and you can change the name and change the color, right? Double click and change the name to whatever you want. You can create a new palette and add colors to different palettes, right? The node view, we don't really have to worry too much with traditional. Just know that everything is connected to a main composite, right? And your layers basically go from right to left, right? So anything connected to the right of the composite is to the bottom here, and anything to the left is on top, right? Okay, so I did mention rendering, so I might as well just show you. If you can see a preview of the render if you click here, right? But right now it looks black, right? And that's because we don't have any color behind these lines, and these lines are black, so everything will render black. So what I can do is come here and just click on this plus sign and add a color card, and I'll add a white background to the background there. Alright, and if I click render now, we'll see, right, that's how it looks, right, with the white background there. Now I believe you can, right, so I just click there to turn off the render. This one is to turn it on, that one is to go back to the regular display. I believe you can change the color of the color card in the display in the layer properties. If you right click and choose layer properties, if you click on this one here, right, you can choose a different color, I believe. Um, no, that's just how it's displaying there. Okay. Oh, this one here, right? You can change the color here, right? So this color is just how it's displayed in the timeline. All right, well, that's actually giving you the exposure here, right? So the color card by default is going to be exposed for the entire duration of the animation. But if you want to change the color of the color card, you change that one there. All right. So I think that is basically everything you need to know to get you started with Toon Boom there, right? Oh, and the other useful shortcut with animation is F and G, right? Actually takes you from drawing to drawing, right? So even if your drawings are every 2 frames, right? If you go forward with the full stop, right? You just be going forward on ones and going back on ones if you do full stop and comma. If you do F and G, right? You'll be going through each drawing. So it's like you're flipping through drawings if you were to be, doing this the traditional way that the Disney animators did it on paper when they were flipping the pages, right? Um, yeah, so I think those are the main things, and your eraser tool is Alt E. Um, so you can choose a soft eraser or hard eraser, depending on the kind of effect that you want, right? These are your tool properties, right? So if I go back to the brush, Alt B, right? I get the tool properties for the brush here. Um, yeah, so I think that is mainly what you need to know for now. All right, just one more thing, right? As I was talking about saving, right? So let's say you wanted to save a different version, right? So let's say you had another version here where one of these circles, let's say for some reason you changed it to a square, right? So I'm just gonna erase this and make it more. Oops. Set my color back to black. Yeah. So let's say you just decided to make that a square there. All right, and you want to save this as a new version. Now, what you could do is the save as and then the save as new version, right? And there's differences between these two. Let's do save as first, right? So I'm gonna do file save as, and let's call it Toon Boom Intro 2. All right, and click save. All right, so let's see what this did. This actually creates a whole new folder, right, inside the same folder here. So there's a Toon Boom Intro folder and a Toon Boom Intro 2 folder, right? So it has its own. It made duplicates, right, of its own background drawing and its own ball animation drawing, right? So just be wary, right, that if you're doing file save as and you're saving another version, right, it's gonna save it in a new folder with the new name, right? Um, Now, what you can do if you want to save another version, you can also do save as new version, but right when you do it this way, if I do Toon Boom Intro 3 now and click OK. Actually, before I do that, let me do another change here, and I'm going to change this to a triangle, right? Right. So now I'm going to do file, save as new version, Toon Boom Intro 3, click OK. Right, and what that does is it will save the new it just saves a new Toon Boom X stage file within the folder that you were working in before. But what it's doing is it's not gonna make separate drawings, right? So it's using back the same drawings as you had before, right? So what you have to keep in mind is if you were to go back now to the Toon Boom Intro 2 X stage, right? And I scrub through this now. We see the square and we also see that triangle. Even though I didn't save that triangle, when I saved the Toon Boom Intro 2, even though the triangle wasn't there when I saved it, because it's not duplicating the drawings, it's keeping the same drawings, right? That drawing would be updated with the previous version, right? So that's something you have to keep in mind there. Um, yeah. So that is basically the fundamentals, right? That you need to know when you're doing the hand drawn stuff.